Thank you, Jack, and we're glad to be joined by Brandon Overdorff, the head coach at Indiana. The Little Indians will open up the season on Friday like everybody else. The Little Indians coming off a 3-7 overall season last year, 3-4 in the WPIAL 4A section play. They narrowly missed the playoffs. Brandon, we're glad to have you here tonight.
Well, good to be here. It's always good to come down to Luther Ford and do this, all the history that's behind it, and see Jack every year. And good to have you, Travis, covering us this year, and always look forward to it.
Looking forward to the start of the season on Friday. Let's start with the fact that last year you're hired sort of late in the game, which is obviously out of your control. You had to try to throw an off-season program together pretty much in May and June. At that point, you're a little bit late into the game, and actually it's hard enough to run an off-season program when you have the whole time So talk about your off-season program. How's participation been? And also, let's get into some of the things that you guys did to try to get the football skills generated for this young team.
Well, obviously, you're right. We came in late last year, but it was a blessing to have 17 seniors that we'll miss. And a 3-year starter quarterback with Luke Thomas, who's now at Millersville University in camp right now, and Liam McDaniel, who was a good lineman for us, is down at Carnegie Mellon. And so we'll miss those guys. Axel Kowalczyk was the defensive player of the year, and so it was good to come in with some guys that had some at least experience and were older. And this year, I think obviously you want to have that entire off season, and we got it. So this is really year one in our mind as a coaching staff, because you get that off season, you get to kind of build that relationship with the kids and set the standard for what you want the off season to be. And that starts with the weight room, obviously. And we're not where we wanted to be yet, but we got some pretty good buy-in from some core kids, and we're moving in the right direction. And summer came around, we have spring ball in May and had pretty good participation there, and summer workouts and 7-on-7s, multiple places, and then we went to a team camp at Shippensburg, my old alma mater, and I think that was really good for us. We took 40-some kids there, and those are all the things you got to do if you want to be successful, no matter what level or what conference you're in. Everybody else is doing it. That's how you develop players, and you just try to build enthusiasm and buy-in through those things. And so we went into heat camp with about 57 kids. We were probably right at about 50 now, breaking camp. I think it's the right 50. A lot of good quality young kids buying into what we're trying to do and understanding the standard and the process, and so we're excited about the season, even though we're extremely young, and to get that first full season in, and it's here, so here we go.
All right, you talked about it. You alluded to the fact that you lose 17 seniors. That's difficult. I know not all of them were starters, but there was a lot of key contributors that really helped to carry this football team. Among them, which you had mentioned, was Luke Thomas. Let's start with the offense. Holes to fill, but like you said, you have some interesting players. Let's talk about some of those guys that are going to be asked to fill some key roles offensively on an offense that's really changed from what it looked like when the season opened last year.
Yeah, I mean, obviously you start with the quarterback. I mean, if I had $1 for every time somebody asked me who the quarterback was going to be this year, I wouldn't have to coach high school football probably, that's for sure. But young kid by the name of Fox Van Leer is kind of leading the way right there right now. All summer long, all winter long, really. Just bought into what we're trying to do. He's a program guy, kind of driving our culture. Being in the weight room 5 days a week, never misses anything, goes home and works on stuff. So he's earned it. And we talk about earning everything in our program, and he's kind of earned it through his work ethic and the chips falling where they fell. And he's coming out on top right now, and really grew up a lot in our scrimmage on Saturday, so I know everybody wants to know who that guy is, and right now that's who it is. And we'll see on Friday. He's going to have a lot of ups and downs, and there's going to be a lot of growth there, but we're excited about him, not just this year, but in the future at quarterback in our triple option offense, which, our personnel really probably fits our offensive scheme and defensive scheme better this year, even though we lost those 17 seniors, than it did last year. And we kind of knew what we had coming, so that's kind of why we put that in last year when we did, even though we had Luke who could throw the ball around, and we probably threw more than we normally would out of that offense. But on the offensive line, we get a kid back by the name of Matt Nelson, who was injured all of last year in a non-football injury. He's been really good in the offseason through camp. He's a big kid, like 6'1", 275. He's got a little edge to him, so that helps set the tone a little bit, too, in the direction that we want it to go. And Ty Oliver is going to be a senior. Matt's just a junior. Ty Oliver is just a senior. He played some for us last year on both sides of the ball, offense and defensive lines. And the last half of the summer in camp has just been a little different kid. He's really bought in and committed to what we're trying to do, and a really explosive kid off the ball. I think he's going to have a big year for us. And then Justin Rabel played a lot for us at linebacker last year, a little bit at our B-back, our fullback. He'll start both those places this year. He's a senior. Another good program kid, always in the weight room. Good just throwback type football player for us. And I think, Braden Hodak will probably start at the other linebacker. He's a senior as well. Kind of touching on my upperclassmen, more so in the underclassmen, but he's another kid that we expect big things out of. And obviously our best football player and kind of the name that everybody knows is probably Malik Turner. He's just a big, strong, not big, but just as strong a kid that I've ever coached for being 5'10", 190. I mean, guys just bounce off him. You saw him run Saturday, and he has tremendous ball skills, God-given stuff like that. I mean, he just adjusts to the ball, catches it. He was all conference last year out of his slot back position as a receiver in our conference, and we kind of bumped him down defensively to outside backer this year just because we think that's kind of where it might translate at the next level. But great family behind him, supporting him, and he's just a tremendously hard worker. I love that kid. I mean, you would take, as a football coach, 45 of those guys, you'd be in business. But I think Malik will have a great year for us, and we'll try to get the football in his hands.
Yeah, and he's definitely someone you want to see with the football. I noticed, and without giving a lot of stuff away, you had a couple of packages that moved him around to some different spots, even some time at quarterback. Your thoughts on will you try to continue to evolve as the season goes on with that?
Yeah, I mean, we had a necessity there. So, I mean, we started with like 7 kids that we were trying to find a quarterback, and he was in that process, and he's a tremendous athlete, like I said, and we really don't have any experience or, age at any of our skill position places. So there was a time Saturday in our scrimmage that we had a sophomore quarterback, 2 sophomore slot backs, or one slot back. Our slot back was a freshman and a sophomore, and our fullback was a sophomore. So with Malik being really our only senior skill player, we got to find ways to get him the ball because he has that experience and under his belt and that age, and so you got to find ways to try to get him the ball. We do have packages for him just about everywhere. He can play every position, and like I said, he's going to have to for us.
All right, you had a scrimmage Saturday against Mount Pleasant, which you had sort of mentioned. Let's talk about your impressions. I was there, and I was encouraged. I thought you guys did a lot of good things. Want to get your take? Talk about some of the highlights and some of the things that maybe your team definitely needs to work on.
Yeah, I mean, we're undersized, we're young, so I think expectations, even from our coaching staff, and we didn't know. They're just all question marks. I mean, we knew some of these guys playing from JV games last year that there's potential there, but how fast could we get them to grow up? How were they, being sophomores, and mature-wise, can they compete at that level, varsity level, even though they're not quite as mature as we'd like them to be physically? Those are all question marks, but you're right, we did some really, really good things. It was exciting to see. I thought our quarterback, Fox, grew up a little bit on Saturday, and a lot of those running backs grew up, and our offensive line is pretty underclass too. You take away Ty Oliver and Todd Traynor, we have Tanner Smith, who's a junior at center, and Gavin Prebish at guard, who's a junior, and Matt Nelson's a junior, and so those guys, they haven't played a lot of football either, and I thought they really came off the ball well. We ran the ball well. We moved up and down the field, and then defensively, I thought we got we got some hats to the football, which you're never sure, whether they can play at that physical level that you need them to. And so there's definitely signs of life, and really, I think as a coaching staff, we were really excited afterwards that we're moving in the right direction and we're building that identity that we want with toughness and just being a physical football team and being able to ground the football out and fly the football and put some bruises on people on defense. So, and in our special teams, we have 2 really good kickers coming back as well. So we should be pretty solid there with our kicking game, with Josh Glazer and Luke Sioka started for us kicking last year. So, and I should mention Ty Oliver is a really good snapper, a long snapper. So, special teams we're excited about, young guys we're excited about, lots of positives, lots to build on. Really, I think we're building something special, and it's just going to take time, and we're going to have to be patient as a staff. And I really think, we have the staff that's going to help me do that. I mean, we got Bill Warwick that's been there 30 years as our defensive coordinator, and Scott Mosgrove came back last year, and what a help he's been to me, both being teachers in the school. And Mike Weaver is our inside linebacker coach, and Mike Boyle is our running back coach, and Lucas Chaycott's back as our line coach, and we added Don Hanai and Ben Snyder to the staff. And really, it's a team effort, and I love the fact that those guys are excited about Indiana football and sacrificing their time away from their families to help me build something special. And yeah, I mean, we got a really good program going right now. We just got to stay the course.
Yeah, and that's one thing I noticed. I love the way your practice is run now. Some of that's a luxury of having 50 players, the way you guys sort of split the field and you have stations and coaches are running things that are ever moving. People aren't, sitting around watching. Instead, they're out, learning and working on their craft.
Well, that is the luxury of being at a 4A school. I like most of these guys in this room, I've coached at that single A level, and that can be a struggle sometimes with numbers. And when you're practicing with 15, 16 guys, it's tough to develop players. And if you got 45 to 50 or 60, or we'd like to have 70, we'd like to have every kid in the school playing football. But allows you to have position coaches, have Indy, and develop every single kid in the program. Everybody gets attention. Everybody gets those techniques and things that you can work their craft every day and get better at, and then also line up with a pretty good second team and play some football, and that's how you get good. That's how players develop, and we have the luxury of doing that, and that's surely what we're trying to do.
Now, I will say, and I've said I've given you credit for this, is the fact that how much you love the JV aspect of the game as far as making sure that your younger players, and I realize everybody here would love to have JV games every week, but sometimes it's not in the cards. I know you would think when you say 4A and 5A schools that you're playing that would always be the case, but it isn't, and I've talked to some folks around the program, and I've seen how hard you fight to make sure if you don't have a JV game coming up, and I know Roger Beidel does some of the same thing. You're actively out recruiting other teams to come and play your JVs just to make sure that those kids get better.
Yeah, well, that's the only way you do get better, is to play live football at full speed, and that's the intensity of it's different whenever you play games, and you need to be able to have kids experience that and push themselves to higher levels, and so it is important. We had some schools that struggle with numbers, and who knows, we may be there at some point too, but we had to reschedule, go find teams last year to fill those slots, but we think it's important to our player development, and kids practice every day. We love to see them play, and we try to put an emphasis on winning every JV game just like we do varsity, and I think that helped us last year. I think these kids that are sophomores that are playing this year definitely grew tremendously because they got that under their belt. So, if you're serious about playing football, you got to play it. You can't. It's tough for a kid to stand there 9th through 11th grade and not get on the field. One, he's not getting any better, and so that's not helping your program. And two, he's going to get bored and go find something else to do. So from a lot of different perspectives, it's important to us, and it's fun to watch him play too. I love to watch him play. Okay,
so one big thing this year, PIAA makes a rule change. We're going from the 25-second play clock hasn't been eliminated, but we're going to a 40-second, and there are a lot of different instances where you still would see 25, but for the most part, you have a running play or a pass play that ends. As soon as that play ends, the clock's reset and starts to count from 40. How do you envision that affecting your team, and especially with a young quarterback? Is there much of a change in how you guys coach?
No, we addressed it on Saturday. We used the 40-second clock in our scrimmage, at least the last 2 or 3 series against Mount Pleasant, and we really had no issue with it. We were snapping the ball at like 25 seconds, so we were prepared to go. And really, in our offense, we'd like to watch it tick down to 2 or 3 seconds before we snap it. So I don't really see it as an issue for us. From a coaching perspective, I think it's supposed to speed the game up. I get it. I think where you might see issues is if somebody breaks off a 75-yard run and they get knocked out of bounds and they start the clock right away. Can we get the officials down to the other side of the field in time to, because it might be 15 seconds before they're ready to snap the ball because it took them that long. No, those guys do a great job, but I really don't see much of a difference. I think it just keeps it moving, and it's in the back of your mind, but it's not really going to affect us. So.
All right, let's talk about, and we've sort of covered this in some other discussions, where the level of competition that you guys are facing, the schedule is pretty brutal. Talk about some of the teams. Let's face it, you got a tough one right off the bat that isn't even a section game. You're going to Katanning this weekend to play Armstrong, but through the season, you guys are going to see Division I talent week after week after week. Talk about the difficulty that's facing your football team.
Well, I think last year, it's the same schedule as last year. Maybe a little easier on us because we don't have to take as many far away trips. But it's difficult. But I don't think you want it any other way. I mean, if you're going to be the best, if you want to be the best football player, you're going to have to play the best. I always tell my kids, you got to push yourself. So, we're not there yet, but that's the goal, to go play Thomas Jefferson and Bell Vernon, and then go out of conference and play 5A McKeesport and Blackhawk and all those teams. So we wouldn't want it any other way. It's a challenge. Yes, it's huge. We got a long mountain to climb, but we're on the right path, and we can't be afraid of that. I mean, that's one thing I want my kids to know is, never back down from any kind of challenge, and really that's the life lesson, is just attack it with all you got. And, the scoreboard doesn't really matter if you left it all there. So the schedule's no different than every day in practice, every day in life, and look forward to it.
Coach, good luck with the season. Looking forward to following you all year long, and we just got a couple of days left, and we'll kick off the 2019 campaign when we head up to Armstrong to take on the Riverhawks. That'll be Friday night, 6:30. I'll have the action along with Bruce Weber, and that'll do it for us. And Doug will be there, but I don't believe we'll see him this weekend. But we'll have that for you all season long on WDAD AM 1450 and 100.3 FM. We'll send it back to Jack.